In about 24 hours, we're going to be watching Senator J.D. Vance and Governor Tim Walz face off in the first and probably only vice presidential debate. But the question is, does it really matter? Well, obviously, that's up to you. But since one of these guys is going to be the next vice president of the United States, I thought now would be a good time to refresh your memory about what the VP actually does. This might shock you, but according to the United States Constitution, the vice president's role day to day is technically nothing. The vice president holds no real day-to-day power. The Constitution lays out two jobs a vice president must perform. One, the vice president is responsible to step in if for some reason the president is removed from office or becomes incapacitated, which we have seen many times in the past, notably when President Kennedy was assassinated and then Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson became president, and when President Richard Nixon resigned and then VP Gerald Ford took over. The other constitutional duty the vice president has is to be the president of the United States Senate. The vice president, as president of the Senate, is responsible for the ceremonial role of overseeing the certification of electoral college votes after the presidential election, which we will see Vice President Harris do after the 2024 election, regardless of whether or not she wins, just like we saw Vice President Mike Pence do back in 2020. And as president of the Senate, the vice president will step in and cast a vote to break a tie when it comes to certain pieces of legislation. Constitutionally, that's it. That's the only power the vice president has. To put it simply, the vice president is not the main character, right? The vice president is part of the supporting cast. Does that make sense? Now, that doesn't mean the vice president hides out. No, in modern times, we've seen vice presidents make speeches and go to events and carry out projects on behalf of the president. The VP serves as a cheerleader, for lack of a better word, for the president and his policies and his administration. Vice presidents do not get to have a platform of their own. Their platform, whether they like it or not, is the president's platform, and it is the vice president's job to sell that platform across the country to the American people. We've also seen vice presidents recently serve as a top advisor to the president when he makes key decisions. So back to tomorrow night's debate. If the VP really has no day-to-day power, who cares what these guys have to say tomorrow night, right? Not really. It is a fact that historically a VP pick has very little impact when it comes to how a voter votes. Like, traditionally, a voter is not going to say, I'm not going to vote for candidate A because I don't like the candidate's vice presidential pick. That's not really how voting has traditionally worked. But the 2024 election is breaking all kinds of political norms because this race is so close. Anything could impact the way a voter decides to cast a ballot, including who is the vice presidential pick. And that's what makes Vance and Walz's performances tomorrow night very important.